Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Marketing Roundtable, a digital marketing podcast. My name is Brian Jones, and I am the producer, and I'm also a paid media strategist, and I'll be handing it over to Brian Cosgrove, the host for today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Cosgrove, Principal and Head Strategist at Braindew. And today we're going to be meeting with Andreas Welsch, and we're going to be talking about AI-powered content and a bit about how you can be using that with thought leadership, or how you can be using that in different things that you are doing on the creative side, publish and build your own content, and really how it's having a big effect on the industry as a whole. So, Andreas, if you could just tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Hey, first of all, Brian and Brandon, thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Absolutely.
I know we met in person, a couple of weeks ago, and so I'm super excited to be back for this conversation. Look, I've been in tech for more than 23 years. I spent most of that time at a company called SAP that runs the business systems of many of the largest companies on the planet that we all interact with or do business with, from finance to procurement to actually marketing, sales, and many other products. And I spent the last 10 years there in and around the topic of AI before I went independent last summer. Last 2.5 years at SAP, I was building and leading the global AI marketing organization, got to position SAP as a leader in AI in that space and enterprise applications, worked super closely with the CEO, with PR, with analyst relations, and with pretty much any of the big AI vendors that you see in the tech news today. So from messaging to positioning to launching new AI products, social, web, influencers, I was a spokesperson. An amazing experience seeing how a large tech company of that size operates when it comes to marketing, product marketing, corporate marketing, and everything in between. So again, super excited to be here today and to share a bit more with your audience how I am using AI in my workflow now as well.
That's really interesting. So you've kind of been on two sides of the conversation. You've been on a side where you're selling AI to different companies and businesses and how they could use AI, but then you're using it a lot in your own, personal side to just produce content, build scripts, or otherwise, as part of your own thought leadership process. So can you tell me a little bit about, on one hand, there are, big solutions, enterprise solutions from companies like SAP and certain workflows that they're putting out there. And then there are these other things, with the LLMs and all the newer tools that have come out with Make and a lot of like do-it-yourselfer type, tools. That's kind of what a lot of people are using practically day to day. And, these two things coexist. Can you kind of tell me your thoughts on the two worlds?
Yeah. So look, now as an independent AI strategy advisor, I help many companies figure out where and how can we use AI in our business. What are the right use cases or scenarios or tools that we should be using? And naturally, I have to use these tools as well to not only go with the times, but be a trusted advisor to those that I get to work with. And for me, it's super exciting again because on one hand, if you're in a corporate environment, hey, there's a high chance that your IT department, that your AI department, if you have one, is bringing more and more AI and more automation to your workplace, to things like Office, to different creative tools, right? Think of Adobe with Firefly, where they've added image generation, video, these type of things. It's no longer just announcements. It's no longer just um, glossy PowerPoints, if you will, or nice image films. It's there. So that's one side. But the other one is if you're getting a little more into these tools, like I said, make.com, where you can easily string together an automation that spans different tools, read something from this tool, put it into a spreadsheet, add more lines, and then push it out to something else. You don't have to be a programmer, right? That's the other exciting thing, because a lot of these tools are so-called low code or even no code, where you can more or less just click and, drag and drop items together and string them together of how do I want this flow or this pipeline to actually work. So it makes it even easier in our individual lives to use these tools. And I mean, certainly, look, these AI tools that we now have on our phone, right? ChatGPT has an app. Anthropic Cloud has one. Microsoft Copilot has one. Google Gemini. Perplexity for your search and augmented search, and DeepSeek and what have you. So we're living and working at a point in time where there's obviously an abundance of information, but there's also an abundance of options that we can choose from and choose to experiment with them and see what is the best one for the task at hand.
Yeah, I definitely hear that a lot. I think one of the things that a lot of marketers are running into right now is they're caught between like a compliance legal team that's like, wait, slow down, don't use AI, you'll share our company secrets. There are a lot of issues, I guess, that they have. And then on the other side, you've got someone probably working with like a consultant, like a high level expensive consultant from one of the big consulting firms. It's like, yeah, and we're going to bring AI into everything. And so you've got these like conflicting messages where
Yeah.
their company doesn't even know necessarily, other than like a completely in-house machine learning, like specialized enterprise application, they don't really know how to deal with these tools that are, cloud-based or software as a service based that, they don't have all of the controls over. So how do you see that changing, I guess, right now? Like
So
how's that sort of affecting you know, a lot of enterprise marketers?
yeah, so let's see. That would be the point where slides could be quite helpful, but I'll visualize it with my hand. So imagine
Yes.
your X and Y coordinates. You
Yep.
have what AI labs are putting out there as innovation that goes pretty fast, pretty steep. And you
Yep.
have what the adoption looks like in companies. It goes relatively flat like this.
Right.
So the delta is the opportunity cost that you have in your business, where there's an abundance of tools theoretically available at your disposal in the market, but there's a slower adoption. Slower adoption also for many good reasons. Yes, companies want and need to protect their data, so you don't put it into DeepSeek, you don't put it into ChatGPT, and it becomes part of their model or the next iteration. But I think there also has to be a healthy balance between safeguarding and protecting data and privacy and making these tools available to your users, because you can also be pretty certain now that everybody has the ability to have these apps on their phone or on their personal device. If you block it on the corporate device, chances are they're going to move to their personal device, and then they're moving the corporate data there as well, whether or not they're supposed to or allowed to. So
Yeah.
the genie is out of the bottle. Sounds a bit cliche, but I don't think we're putting it back. So you need to think of, how can I actually embrace this? What are things that we can make available to our employees within guardrails, where it makes sense to use it, right? And again, tools like Adobe Firefly could be one way to use image generation, where it's legally safe and sound. They trained this on their own corpus of licensed data, so
Yeah.
you're safer there than if you go with OpenAI or maybe some other models that have not had the same level of rigor and not even the same data set, for example.
Yeah. And well, one thing that also is just generally speaking, we've got a lot of people that are subject matter experts at like their particular field, but they're not all experts at the various AI tools. So you've got people that are like leading the department that maybe are responsible for creating the operating, the ways of working, the operating procedures and so on that might use AI, but they don't necessarily know AI enough themselves.
Yeah.
And so, they're afraid of maybe even their direct reports using AI in ways that they don't understand how it works or, the impact on the business. So, what are some ways that maybe what does it look like when it's going well? Like when you see a group, we just think about like a particular group gets traction with using AI tools. What does that look like to you?
So let me
Yeah.
quickly speak to the first point that you mentioned,
Yeah.
and then come to how does it look well. So at the end of last year, there was a study that Slack, the workforce communication company,
Hmm.
created, and they found that about 46% of respondents said, "I'm not telling my manager that I use generative AI in my work because there's a high likelihood that they think I'm lazy or I'm incompetent, or that they think I'm more efficient now and I get more work. So I'm not telling my boss that I use ChatGPT and the like." What does it tell us about corporate culture? There's a lot of work to be done, right? So now companies that do this well, you have managers that embrace the technology, that empower their employees, even if they don't fully understand it themselves, right? You will very likely have team members that are a bit more tech savvy, that are more on the innovative edge, that want to try this out. In my role at SAP, for example, I had a team member early on when ChatGPT came out, and he said, "Look, yes, I'm a product marketer. I can write copy. I get a lot of praise for it, but I'm not a trained copywriter. So to be more effective and more efficient, I would like to use ChatGPT. Can I do this?" And I said, here are some guardrails. Again, don't put confidential data in there. Don't put personal data in there. Um, Anonymize it where you can to some extent. But yes, please use it. And also come back and share with the rest of the team how you used it. What are the prompts? What did you find? Where did it work exceptionally well? Where did you run into issues or roadblocks? And then let's keep iterating, because also I, as a manager, I don't have a lot of time to sit there and experiment with this myself. I can do
Right.
this after hours, maybe a little bit. But we're all busy professionals, and especially in managerial roles, right? It's a meeting marathon of sorts a lot of times. So if you can share with us, and if you can share with me how you use it, I learn something as well. It's a great opportunity, but it also needs a little bit of that mindset of, you don't need to know it all. You have an entire team that can figure it out, and they can figure it out together, and they can share it with you too. So I think that's where it works extremely well. I would say one other thing: don't just limit yourself to one tool. Doesn't matter if it's the assistants, if it's um, ChatGPT, if it's an Anthropic Cloud, Gemini, Copilot, and what have you, but try out multiple of them, because you will see they respond differently. They interpret your prompts differently. They generate images differently. Um, Position of words, similar or simple things, nuances like that can have a different effect based on the tools. So the more you experiment, you say, "Oh, well, this works here, but it doesn't work there. But if I do that there, it doesn't work here." They open up your mind to experiment more. And also, last point here, um, it might take you a little longer to experiment with these tools and figure out how to get to a similar output in another tool that you've previously easily created in another one. But it's time well invested, because the savvier you get across different tools, the more comfortable you get, the more confident you get. And again, the more you'll be able to empower your team as well to do the same.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I guess with my team, I've encouraged them to start using different tools, the ChatGPTs or Geminis or other kinds of LLM type tools in their daily lives, because I know that it's going to translate to them getting more comfortable with prompting, more comfortable with hallucinations, more comfortable with what it can and can't do. And really, just testing those boundaries and seeing firsthand what works and what doesn't. But I just, I do hear sometimes some pushback from some companies and teams. They're worried about, I also don't want people just playing around with AI all day. Like, there's a learning curve that they're not always willing to create enough space for, to till it turns into practical applications. They're still trying to hold people accountable for results and with their use of time. But because it can be a little bit unclear when and how that's gonna manifest in an upside, business result.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we also encourage the well-being and health of our employees, and encourage them to take a walk during lunch break.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
that has limits too, right? You cannot go for a walk from 8 to 5, from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So you need to set these boundaries as well, right? And it's these expectations. Yes, go ahead, play around with them, but you still have some work to do, and you're going to be measured by the results that you deliver. Now, it's fine if you put in a little more time and you learn, and maybe you do that over a couple of days or over a couple of weeks, and you iterate and you get better and better. There's absolutely a learning curve. But when it does turn into, let's say, too much experimentation, aside from or detached from the job or from the task at hand, like anything else, that's when we should set boundaries, or even beforehand set boundaries and say, this is how we would like you to use it, and how you can use this in your work and on company time. But if it's about creating images of cute little kittens with glasses and party hats, and it's not related to your work, then maybe that's a 5 to 9 and not a 9 to 5 type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm wondering right now, like you mentioned about that Slack case where people are afraid
Mhm.
that their management would view them as lazy or that they would tack more work on those people's shoulders. And I think that, to me, I think part of it is, yeah, but like the time I clawed back is the reason I know how to use these tools. Like,
Yes.
basically, yes, I got this thing done in a shorter time frame, but I needed that time using AI and experimenting and learning to be able to do this here. It means in the future, the next time you need the same kind of task, it's the short time frame.
Right.
But I need that extra time now that I'm kind of tooling and professionally like developing myself to be able to do this and that time frame moving forward. How do you get that mindset shift where managers and leaders are uh they're accepting that there's a little bit more learning curve. So now they're allowing themselves to budget for it, but they're not also overworking their teams once they get into production mode. Like, how do we manage that sort of like that balance there
Yeah.
where the people involved in production work aren't saying, yeah, so it used to take 8 hours. So I'm going to tell you that I spent 8 hours on it when I really spent 6 hours learning AI and 2 hours actually doing it.
Yeah, I think that's part of the learning curve that is happening. So I forget the exact numbers. I think it was what 10,000 hours to become an expert, but 100. What was it? 100,000 hours on the road to become an expert driver or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, when I took my driving test a long time ago. So in similar ways, I think that can apply here as well. So yes, there is some time that you need to invest. That you also need to give your employees the space to invest. It doesn't necessarily mean that the next time they're already 20% more efficient. Maybe, if they do this 5 more times, 10 more times, and they refine their prompt and they get a better understanding, like you said, what works, what doesn't work, what works well and what doesn't work well. That's how they learn and how they improve. So it might very well be a more continuous and evolutionary process getting to this level of proficiency where it only takes you 2 hours if you're given the task and no longer 8 hours, 6 learning to applying. Um, and maybe that's also the point in time then when people are more proficient that they think, well, if I tell my manager now that I use AI, they know that it takes 2 hours, right? And maybe they have even tried this out themselves, where they're quite competent now on AI. They know this only takes 2 hours. So if I tell them I use AI, yeah, then I get 6 hours more work on top of what I've already done. Now, also when you look at how technology adoption and learning has traditionally happened, um, especially this part around automation, right? Um, there's always a set of mundane tasks.
Yeah.
Look at um, look at finance, for example. If you run your own business, you're seeing this day in and day out, right? You get invoices from your vendors, for example. You need to download them. You need to look at the information that's there. You need to put them into your accounting system, and you need to say, yes, I want to pay this at a certain date, or I want to pay this today. Pretty mundane. So we can automate parts of it. We were able to automate the download it, put it here, open it, using tools like robotic process automation already 10 years ago. Then machine learning, a subset of AI, was added, and we were able to extract information from these invoices, from these documents, and we could put it into our accounting system. Well, now we can also do this in many more languages, thanks to generative AI and these large language models that can process languages and many different kinds of languages, not just English, not just the kinds that they've seen before. So you would say that the next level of mundane tasks has been automated. Okay, fine. So we move on to the next thing. What happens once you've entered it in the system? You still need to make the payment. You still need to follow up. You still need to see, have they actually paid, or why are they not paying? So we're moving up inch by inch and are clawing us from one mundane task to the next. So in the same vein, just because we've increased the level of automation doesn't mean that people all of a sudden only work 2 hours because the task takes 2 hours. there's obviously more work to do. And again, more higher level work where we need people that are highly skilled, that are trained, that are experienced. And that's the kind of work that we should be doing to begin with. Now, the next part and the next question that opens up, again, managers listen up as well, because you might have those conversations with your employees soon too. Now, what happens if all you do is high level, is high value work? Shouldn't you be paid more? Because right, all these mundane things, they're taken care of. That's the easy stuff. Now you're the one looking at the tough nuts that you need to crack. So I think we'll have a discussion sooner or later as well. On one hand, utilization, 2 hours, 6 hours. How do we fill 8 hours? And we will find ways to fill 8 hours. Every company will. But then also remuneration. How does that change? Does it change?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so one thing that I think, a lot of people aren't into right now, it's like theoretically talking about using AI is one thing, but actually having an exact set of tooling in place. Actually saying, okay, these are the key technologies that we're going to learn in 2025 because we think they're still going to matter in 2027. Like in a world where startups and sort of like applications built on top of models and, we've got all of the LLM pieces, but also other forms of machine learning and AI that are also getting thrown in the same bucket of AI good. Like that's or AI challenging. They're rolling a lot up right now. If you were to say, okay, most teams should be using at least these three technologies that are associated with AI, what are the three? What are your top three?
I would say, first of all, in general, look at the applications that your company, that your teams are using anyways. Have the vendors added AI over the last 2 years? There's a high chance that they have. Most
Mhm.
software vendors have. Are you using it yet? If not,
It's like
what
the
would it take,
built-in
right?
AI features. So if
Yeah,
people are,
right.
for
So
example, spreadsheets.
spreadsheets, or say Firefly in Photoshop.
Yep.
Um, Do you have access to it? Is it part of a higher tier subscription? Is it an add-on that you need to buy? Do you need to buy this for all your employees? Do you need to buy this for a subset, those that work with stock images, for example? And then what would that mean if they have access to these features? Would it save money? Would it accelerate things? Would you be able to generate more money because you now have access to a lot more creative material, if you will, or this creative engine in some sense that maybe even thinks more out of the box than your teams are doing at the moment. So, anyways, long story short, where are you using or where are you using AI already? Where are you not using it, but you could, and then figure out what would it take to use it. Now, to answer your question, um, I think it depends on different things, right? It depends on the role you're in. For example, tools to help you write copy or better copy. I think Copy AI is one of them. Jasper is another one that comes to mind. Um, if you've heard of those, or even if you haven't, go
Mhm.
try them out. Get a trial. See what does it mean if I can use AI to help me generate copy. How well does it adhere to our brand guidelines, to our style guide, to our tone, to our voice? Does it sound authentic? Does it sound like we would want to write this, and would we be able to publish this? What would it save us? Right. So you get very, very quickly to these business questions. If you're more on the media and production side, so you have a podcast, maybe you edit that in house. There are great tools that let you do that and accelerate your workflow. There's one that I personally use that's called Descript. And with that, you can edit a video or an audio recording just like you would edit a Word document. And you can push it out. You can push it to YouTube. You can push it to where you host your podcast and enable it for distribution. You can create little snippets with the help of AI. Find the most viral moments. By the way, that's another tool. It's called Opus Clip. If you're looking at that, find the most viral moments that if I put this on TikTok or on YouTube, I will get lots of views and clicks and what have you. So it depends on your role. It depends on your goal. First of all, start looking at what am I using today? Is there AI that I could be using? And then start looking at your workflow. Where am I spending a lot of time? And are there tools that have AI embedded that I could be using?
Okay.
Maybe, Yep. Maybe to give you one example, I have been hosting my own live stream and podcast for the last 4 years. It's called "What's the Buzz? AI in Business," where I invite guests, professionals and AI leaders in the industry to come on the show and talk about how they're using it in their business. What are some of the challenges they've run into? Getting buy-in from stakeholders, getting buy-in from employees. How do you run governance? What are good use cases, and so on. And um, there, um, my post-production workflow used to take 3 to 4 hours, maybe sometimes 5, from podcast, turning it into a newsletter to repurpose the content like we all should be doing when we have high quality content. Writing a newsletter article myself took a lot of time, so I quickly started using ChatGPT, but even there, copy and pasting things in there took a good amount of time. Then I used Midjourney to generate images. I really love Midjourney for its creativity, for the different styles, for its ease of use and simplicity. And I think it's still one of the best tools out there in the market. But again, it took me some time in several iterations until I had a finished image that I would put as the main image of the blog. There I said, that looks cool. That looks different, right? It doesn't look fake like many of the DALL-E images look from OpenAI. You couldn't really tell it's AI generated. It could be a highly skilled graphic designer that put this together. By the way, that opens up a whole another conversation about AI versus what humans are doing. But from cutting it down from 4 hours to now a minute and 20 seconds to generate the information, to repurpose the content, social posts, promo posts, newsletter article in maybe half an hour, smoothing out some little kinks here or there where it still sounds like AI, right? In this day and age of AI transformation, we know when we read these sentences, most likely AI generated, right? So, um, but going from 4 hours to 30 minutes, huge time saver. I'm a business of one at the moment, so I need to look for these ways. And if I need to look for them, I'm sure even if you have resources, 5 or 10, or how many people in your team, you can unlock these efficiencies as well. You just need to start looking for them.
Yeah. When I think about our audience, and a lot of them are professional marketers, they've got full time jobs. And there's this part of them that knows it would be good to talk in the industry. It would be good to participate. It's good for their career. It's good for their network. They'll get exposure, and collaboration opportunities with some of the best talent. But they don't have, for them, it's the barrier of entry for producing content. Like you said, that 3 to 4 hours per video, it's a lot. It's a lot. But if you're telling them that, it can be that accessible that they can get things down to a couple of minutes with maybe a half an hour of review, it starts to become something that it can fit in their reality. It can fit in their work life.
Yeah,
Um,
but I mean, look, maybe instead of binge watching Netflix shows, go to
yeah,
YouTube, binge watch YouTube videos on how do I use these tools? How are other people creating their workflow, and start setting it up little by little, right? Maybe there's just one component um, that summarizes information for you, or that rewrites it. Then maybe you add another one that all of a sudden saves it in a Google Doc or in a Word file, and maybe you add another one to generate an image. And it's a little by little, right? You can expand that workflow. You don't have to do it everything or all at once. You can do that over multiple days, multiple weeks, and refine it as well. But there's so much, again, good content, good information on LinkedIn. People sharing the how-tos. That's a treasure trove.
This podcast is powered by Braindew, a digital marketing agency that not only provides a diverse mix of digital services, but offers guidance, experience, and true partnership to bring your business to the next level. This episode is about artificial intelligence, but we also offer expertise in other areas such as paid media, SEO, development, analytics, data science, and design, just to name a few. We've worked with businesses on every level, from local operations to Fortune 500 companies across a variety of industries. We have experts to strategize and execute your digital marketing needs, no matter what step in the process you're at. We're there for you. From wireframes to paid campaigns. Braindew, experts in everything digital. Please reach out today to learn more about how we can help your business grow.
yeah. So what are some a lot of people I think have gotten past the point of let me use a chat GPT, put some information in there and see what comes out. And they get these AI generated pieces that aren't personalized, they're not in their voice. They're sort of wherever the model wants to go right now. Um, how do people get over the hump from that to something that they feel like they're ready to use?
Yeah. So if you use standard off-the-shelf tools like ChatGPT or Claude or others, there are at least two recommendations that I have for you. One is you can elevate your prompting techniques, right? If you look for common frameworks or styles, you could say you are an expert social media marketer focusing on in industrial machinery in this or that sector or subsegment. I want you to write a blog post about this topic, and you can give it more information, right? If you're a little more advanced on prompting, if you've tried this out, you might know this. You can give it a sample, maybe of an article, or you can give it multiple samples of articles that you have written. And then you say, well, I want you to write this article in the same style, tone, and voice as these other examples that I'm giving you. So is it perfect? No, but it's a quick way to get closer to your tone and voice. Now, if you use a subscription to any of these tools, and let's take ChatGPT, for example, ChatGPT Plus, $20 a month. Already for a year and a half or so, they've had features where you can upload documents and you can create your own what they call a GPT, like a more encapsulated automation. So you can say, hey, I want you to look at these documents. Could be PDFs of blog posts or documents you've written, could be emails, Word documents, what have you. Um, and then again, same thing. I want you to be a an experienced marketing expert, digital marketing, focusing on these verticals, and you will write blog posts. And when you write blog posts, you look at the information that you see here in these PDFs and Word documents and what have you. And I want you to adopt the same style and tone and voice. So by giving it more examples and maybe long form posts and multiple long form posts, you can get it to get a lot closer to your brand voice, to your own voice and tone as well.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm hearing is that people would just need to spend the time to kind of start to tune it till they start getting outputs that they like. It just seems to me like, as you're describing it, it is a bit of an iterative process
Mhm.
where they just need to keep finding more and more samples and examples and prompting techniques just to try to get an output that that fits. And then the other part is, I think we worry about uh, what happens when again, people generate tons and tons of articles sort of based off of whatever's in news headlines. And, they start engineering a content pipeline. And then it's like the person's individual contributions and what they really do in real life and what they work on, all of that gets lost. They're not doing thought leadership from an authentic place. They're doing it from a generative place. How do what do you think it's gonna look like when, as more and more content floods, the web and social media that's generated, how do people get authentic voices to shine through?
It's a very profound and a very difficult question, I would say. So, look, I've been on LinkedIn for the last 4 years, active as a creator. I was part of LinkedIn's Creator Accelerator program. I'm a LinkedIn top voice. So I create content on how can you implement AI in your business on a daily basis, short form, long form, articles, videos, blog posts, what have you. And I personally enjoy thinking about what does all of that technology actually mean? How can we use this? How can we use this in ways that it helps us, that we make a difference, that it benefits us? So thinking is one part, writing it down and communicating is the other. So to me, thought leadership is part of what I do and part of how I also see myself generating income and am generating income. Um, but what we've also seen over the last 2 years, especially since more and more people have started to use ChatGPT and these tools, more vendors of social media, scheduling tools have been adding AI. It can write your posts. Look here. Or it can create a carousel for you, a PDF at the end, and it's all based on this one article that you feed it that somebody else has written. And you sound like an expert. And to your point, there is so much content and so many influencers and quite frankly also wannabe influencers that share news, that create a lot of content, that push it out, and it gets really, really hard standing out in that crowded market, especially if you're in a field that is getting a lot of interest and that's going through a hype at the moment, like AI. So one thing is you can try to keep up. You get the same tools, write these blog posts for me. I just give you a little prompt, write a LinkedIn post again about industrial machinery and mills and presses and whatnot. And it cranks out 5 different variations. You take the 2 that you like, Tuesday, Thursday, schedule, boom, out the door, I'm done. Okay, one way. The other is to take a step back, even though that sounds cliche, and say, well, what do I want to be known for? How can I build an audience that trusts me, that knows when I publish something, whether it's AI generated or not, that's a different topic. But when I publish something, it's thoroughly researched. It's true. It's it's um, it's grounded in experience. It's a perspective that people are interested in, and it's not just a generic fluff that anybody can generate at the click of a button. And also, the other thing I would say is once or imagine you're in an elevator with your CEO or top client, the power goes out, and they ask you, so what do you think about this? I saw you wrote this article about, I don't know, HR departments not being at the table when IT implements AI. What do you think? Well, if you've been using AI heavily to generate all this content for you, but you haven't read or thought about it thoroughly, you're in trouble. And ChatGPT is offline. All of a sudden, you need to think on your own 2 feet. So I believe as a thought leader and as a genuine thought leader, you need to know your stuff. You need to think about these things and you need to have an answer. You need to have a perspective when the lights go out or when you're in front of a camera and you're being asked an unexpected question. So that's where I think real thought leadership and experience and authenticity stand out from the off-the-mill, bland, generic content that you can generate at the click of a button. It's also incredibly tough, again, competing in this increasing, or in this world of increasing content. So you need to find your best way and strategy. Do I want to talk about news and the latest news? Then I need to automate even more than what I described, how I've been automating my newsletter. Then you need to um, you need to go to RSS feeds and what's the latest news and aggregate different news pieces and what's common among them. How would I say this in my voice? Write a 30-second script, put it into my AI voice clone, put it into my AI avatar, add captions, put out a video, and then post it. You can do that, right? It's no longer science fiction. Let's be realistic. And it looks and it sounds like you or I would when we put in a little effort to create these AI voice clones or avatars. But is that really what helps us build authority in that domain and that space?
You know, to your point, and I love where you're going with this because, it's one thing to be like, I'm a thought leader. And really today that seems to be like, I'm a broadcaster of information in the industry about this area. But that's not necessarily the same as being a subject matter expert, of being an actual authority on the item where, without ChatGPT, you can answer it in the elevator when the light, when the power goes out.
Yeah.
And so, the question I guess that I have is for people that, that are doing this and in a world when they're competing against auto-generated sort of workflows and they want to be a subject matter expert, how can how can tools, all these AI tools help them maybe earlier in the process, as they're just trying to develop their ideas, as they're just trying to or refine them or kick the tires on different, pieces of think subjects that they'd like to speak about. and how can it help them do that without just sort of like jumping right to, and here's your homework done for you, so to speak.
So in many ways, I think of parallels to photography.
Mhm.
Analog photography, digital photography, and maybe even photography with your smartphone. Um, Guess what? There's still people there that take pictures with an analog camera, and they love it, and they're really, really good at it.
Yeah.
But they, you know, they might not be able to post an analog picture to social media 2 seconds after they've taken it.
Right.
So it depends on one hand, your approach and your use case, on your craft as well. Maybe there are some things where you deliberately say, I sit down and I will write this newsletter piece because
Yeah.
it's an original, authentic piece, and I want to think through this. And when I think through this, I am prepared. When the lights go out, when the power goes out, I can have that conversation. I have a point of view.
Yeah.
Maybe in a conversation like this, where we have some questions that we align on beforehand, but if a thought crosses your mind and you ask me and it's unexpected and I don't have an answer, it doesn't look good, right? But if I thought through this before, not a problem. Right? I
Right.
have an opinion. I think more than ever, it's about having opinions that where you've researched the information, where you've drawn your own conclusions, where you don't depend on technology 24/7 to give it in little bite-sized pieces to you, where it's not in 30-second clips because our attention span keeps shrinking. So I think it's incredibly important to have that perspective and also to define for you, where do I want to use AI? For me, that is repurposing content. The information is there. I'm just having AI help me say it in 3 different ways, a little shorter,
Yeah.
a little longer in a newsletter, but the transcript is there. I've had this conversation with my guest. You can
Yeah.
watch it. You can listen to it. It's there.
Yeah.
It's just 5 different ways of saying the same thing, and I'm not adding value, right? That's the part for me. Whether I sit there for a minute and 20 seconds and click the button and it runs this and I review it for the next half hour, or if I sit there for 4 or 5 hours doing it, I'm not adding value. I'm not adding new information. I'm not adding new insights. I'm just taking what's already there and I put it in a slightly different form. On the other hand, that's where I alternate between my newsletter articles. On other weeks, off weeks basically, where I don't post about a conversation that I've had on the podcast, I create something original. So, for example, just this morning, I published something about X and Meta using data that has been created, where people wrote books or papers, and that data is ingested. XAI, owned by Elon Musk, now also owns X, formerly Twitter. They're creating a data flywheel to ingest data that people create on Twitter or X, improve their model, use the model to improve Twitter, or show you things that are more in line with what you're more likely to comment on, or take action on, or buy, or amplify, or what have you. So again, to me, that means thinking much more deeply about what is the situation, what are the different implications, where is this going, why is this important, what does that mean? And I really don't want to outsource that to an AI, because to me that is super exciting. And if I sit there on a long night and I type up that newsletter, it comes from me and it's something that I've thought about and not just said, well, in whatever 5 minutes, 3 prompts and 2 iterations, AI has created this thing for me.
So the way you describe it, it's like AI in your world is free, meaning it's giving you your time back. You did the videos, you did the podcast, you maybe even wrote some of the content, but post production, or sort of in that area after you've developed it, it allows you to get it into the newsletters, to get it
Right.
formatted, to get
Yep.
the voiceovers, to get the captions, to get all these other pieces done, so that you kind of have the full deliverable package, so to speak.
Mhm.
So
And
from that work, and now that means you have all that more time to kind of develop and invest into your craft and into it.
exactly. Now, I also spend, I would say, a good 2 or 3 days creating that workflow and
Yeah.
optimizing it to the point where it is now. It didn't take a minute and 20 seconds when I started.
Mhm.
It took me some time to figure out the API calls to the site where I host my podcast. It took me some time to figure out how to use the OpenAI GPT APIs and set up the account and everything. But once I was there, yes, I'm at a minute and 20 seconds, right? And again, maybe that also goes back to the earlier point, employees being concerned. If I tell my manager it only takes me 2 hours instead of 8, they think I'm lazy. Yeah, but it's taking you weeks and weeks or months and months to get to this point where it only takes you 2 hours, right? So to your other
So
point, that also
how
is worth
much do you
thinking about.
think yeah, so how much do you think the individuals should be, investing in learning this? Or, do you imagine that in the future where there will be specialists that will come in and sort of intake what your requirements or what your roles are and help you design those workflows and be like, well, you should be using this tool and that tool and that tool. Where do you think the interplay between these, like the people who have the experience getting, they've already been there, they've already gotten it down to that couple minutes workflow, those people, are now consulting to help the other people kind of skip all the learning curve that they had to go through individually. Where do you think the mix is?
It's an incredibly exciting and yet complex question. It can go in so many different directions, right? It's on one hand, when you experience the technology and you see how easy still it is to create these things in these workflows, and additional capabilities with AI. There's a whole topic that's called agentic AI, where you give a goal to AI and it researches information for you. It is tasks on your behalf, or it comes back with the recommendations. It's, hey, here are the three options. Maybe number one or number two here is the best one for your case. Which one do you want me to take action on, right? As technology gets even better, there's one school of thought where um, companies, teams, new companies that don't even yet exist will be much smaller, will have a lot fewer humans working in them because there is AI that is a lot more capable, that is capable similar to what trained or skilled professionals in different business domains would do, not just marketing, finance, procurement, HR, what have you. So that's one thing, right?
Right.
Um, you will still need somebody that helps you set that up. And ideally, that's somebody in your company, because as you're building the company, as you're building up knowledge, as you're working with customers, as you're defining your identity, your brand identity, your products, and everything, there is that special knowledge and culture almost that will need to go into these tools as well to represent what you are as a company and how you want to be perceived and how you want to interact with your customers and how that tone and voice should be. Um, on the other hand, I think that the dependence on just vendors that come in and help us do this is a difficult one, because you will need to have that intellectual property, that skill set, that mindset in your company. It's not like you have employees that just go about their business as if nothing happened with AI and as if that thing didn't even exist. And then you bring consultants in and they magically plug it in. I, I think we need to upskill our employees, and we need to bring them on to this journey that, hey, yes, there is technology. It helps you do things you haven't been able to do before, better, faster, cheaper, in many different ways. You are still in control, and I want you to be in control of that final output, that final result. You own it, but you now have minions, if you will, that work on your behalf, that can research different parts. You need to assemble it, maybe, or maybe even they assemble it for you, but you are still in control. And I want you to be able to use these tools, because we all need to use them. That makes you a valuable employee. Not only do you know about our business and customers and products and services, but you know how to put this in context and how to write a good message framework, and how to create good positioning and value props and things that are involved in the launch. But maybe you're not the one that needs to write every little piece of copy themselves. Right? Maybe AI can help you do that, or it gives you three different variations, and you say, "Well, hey, for my A/B test, I take this and I take that, and here we go." And then we see which one performs better. So, I think it's a lot more about learning and encouraging our employees. How do we work with these tools? And I want you to use these tools. You're not lazy. You're not incompetent. I need you to use them. So we are all more productive and we get better results as well.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, we talked about the post production and how you can speed up workflows and things like that. On the front end of it, even before you sort of produce that core piece, I'm seeing a lot of people use it for research or for kind of evaluating pros and cons of different ideas and just trying to get using it as a sounding board, for different things, or to educate themselves to say, well, why couldn't I do this? Sort of, uh, to vet different ideas. Um, what about those workflows, and how do companies maybe, how do you do a lot of that yourself, and how do you see that part of it, sort of before you get to that core content piece, not just speeding up on the other end of it?
So let me give you an example briefly from a different domain. I'm also an adjunct professor. I teach management information systems to undergrads in the Philadelphia area. And in the fall, I introduced generative AI to the class. I said, I want you to use ChatGPT and Claude. I want you to get more comfortable with it. We did 2 lessons on it. What is it? How does it work? The pros, cons, ethics, biases, what have you. And I said, you can also use it, for example, um, to practice interviews. If you're going for an internship, take the job description, put it in, and give it instructions. I want you to be a recruiter. Let's role play. I give you answers. You give me feedback at the end. How can I be more confident in my answers, in my delivery? What are things that I could add, that I should emphasize based on my skill set, my interest, this role, and so on? So, why am I telling you this? Because I think you can do the same thing also in marketing. I've also used it to create ICPs, ideal customer profiles,
Mhm,
personas. And
mhm.
then all of a sudden you can role play with this persona. Well, what are the wants and needs that this person has? How do you think ChatGPT or Claude, this persona would react to this kind of copy? All of a sudden you connect the two, right? You create a copy with the help of AI, you create a persona here. Say, take this persona from here, run it against that copy, and tell me, how would it resonate? What's missing? What would make it more tangible? And yes, it's a somewhat hypothetical exercise because that persona isn't real. Even if you do it on paper, the persona isn't real. But
Right.
probably because ChatGPT and these tools have learned enough about language and different preferences and styles and so on, it can give you a better response. And you can say, well, how should we change it? And all of a sudden you have a conversation with the tool and it says, well, if you change this word for that, or you change the order and you add these kind of things, then it resonates more strongly with your ideal customer profile. Um, what are images, colors, creative, um, that resonates with the persona? Could also be things that you can be asking. So really treating it as a sparring partner, as a partner for brainstorming, as a sounding board to your point, but
Mhm.
also getting into this mindset where we work with these tools in a more iterative way than we've been used so far, right? So far, we've been clicking
Right.
buttons and filling out form fields in many cases. This is
Yeah.
not that, right? This is a lot more akin to a conversation.
And that to me is a lot more, it's like a human is sort of required participant in that process. To me, I guess what you're describing there is a case where, humans can use this to help them become the person in the elevator,
Yeah.
who has an
Yeah.
opinion. Help themselves sort of become the expert on the topic. And so, it sounds to me like, there's two different pieces that even if people don't have necessarily a ton of applications on the production side, if they're not exactly a creative designer, if they're not responsible for producing copy, this part feels like it's valuable to kind of everybody involved in marketing or different
So
roles.
I would say if you think you don't have a use or a use case for AI,
Yeah.
think again. Start doing some research. There's something, I guarantee you, there's something where it adds value and where it shaves off time. Something. The question is, what is it? What is it in your specific case? Is it, again, helping you create a straw man for that pitch deck to your customer?
Mhm.
It's not perfect the first iteration, maybe not even the second, but it helps you get to a straw man pretty quickly. How many times have you or I sat there and started from scratch and thought,
Mhm.
well, what should I put there? You think
Yeah.
this looks good? Make it a little longer, yeah, fine, okay. But what are the exact words that I want to put there? Especially if you're not a copywriter,
Yeah.
it's a little harder. Um, but getting to a good first draft. It's perfectly fine. You can do that with copy, you can do that with slides, you can do that with audio, video, any different type of media. Um, in my accounting software, there's AI, to give you an example. So for travel receipts, I can take a picture of my travel receipt and I upload it to the accounting software. There's some AI in the background that extracts the information. It populates a record that has most of the information correct, if not all, and it says, can you please check that this is right? And when you approve, this becomes an expense. There's AI. I'm not writing code. I'm not doing prompt engineering. I'm using AI to help accelerate part of my workflow. I don't need to go and enter each little detail, each little line item there. So that would be my encouragement. If you think you don't have a use case for AI, think again. Look, search, look for the tools you use, or maybe even there are different tools that you could be using and maybe replace something that you have in your workflow because there's AI, because it accelerates what you're doing. By the way, not just because there's AI. That's the worst part to start, but because there's business outcome at the end. Right? That's the important part.
Yes. Okay. That is a great point, and I think, as we start to wrap up here, I wanted to ask just a couple of, general questions. What are some of the most exciting kind of glimpses at use of AI or things happening in the AI workspace that you're particularly excited about right now?
So the pace of innovation is incredibly fast. What I shared earlier, where the innovation curve goes up much faster, much steeper than the adoption curve. That's what we're seeing on a daily basis. If you read the tech news, it gets dizzying. But that also means that there are many different kinds of AI where progress is being made. For example, I have a book that's called the AI Leadership Handbook, where you can learn how you can turn technology hype into business outcomes. I published that last fall. And just before the holidays last year, I wanted to create an audiobook. It's pretty expensive if you do that with a full production, but I found that you can actually use AI to create a replica of your voice or a voice clone. For about $100 for one of the mid-tier subscriptions, I was able to narrate the entire book in about 2.5 days, and I could publish it. Now, there was only one platform at the time where I could do that, Rakuten Kobo. In December, in January, audiobooks.com was added. In February, Spotify Find a Way Voices added the capability. Just last week, Amazon Audible did the same thing. So within a quarter, from only having one option to going to Spotify and Amazon Audible as the market leaders, capturing about 60% of market share, is incredible, right? They're capturing the opportunity. They're seeing the opportunity for business model change. And if you do it with Amazon, it doesn't even cost you a cent. Not your own voice, but a stock voice. If you think that's good enough, perfectly fine. So innovation is happening incredibly fast. Look at video generation. Some of the models that were heralded as the next best thing, think of OpenAI Sora, turned out to be maybe not so great yet. If you look at Google's equivalent, that seems to be doing really well. You've had others like Runway or Pika on the market for some time. They've been able to create 3-second snippets, maybe extended to 5. Kling AI as another one. So there's so many tools. It's all about finding that use case and experimenting with it. Things are moving incredibly fast. The best thing you can do is invest in yourself by trying out these tools, finding ways to incorporate them in your workflow and replace something that you're doing manually today. Even if it takes longer initially to use them, it'll be a big payoff at the end when you can show the results and as you're getting more and more comfortable.
All right. So, in addition to your podcast, um, what's the buzz? And obviously, you've mentioned you've got a great book that's out that a lot of people on here can go pick up. Can they buy that on Amazon? Where can they buy this?
Yeah, you can buy that pretty much anywhere where you can buy paperback or ebook copies or even audiobooks. So from
You just mentioned the audiobook, right?
yes,
Yes. So if they want to actually see that, and AI was part of the process of helping you produce that, they can go check that out to kind of see it in action. So that's
Exactly.
great. So in addition to that, are there any other kind of, if you're talking to a large group of marketers here, um, where should, are there like, a site or other places that they should also just to keep their finger on the pulse of all of this innovation you just talked about? Are there a couple of places you would recommend to say they should at least be checking these places out?
Yeah. So, if you're on LinkedIn, follow me there. Like I said, I'm a top voice. I create content there daily on
Yes.
AI in business. I would also encourage you to visit my website, intelligence-briefing.com. I enjoy talking to professionals, to leaders, to organizations about the potential of AI and how you can actually unlock that potential in your organization. So, if that's something where you're looking for inspiration for your teams that are maybe a little more hesitant, or maybe your leadership team that's trying to figure out what is that AI thing? Is it real? And how should we use this? Can we even use this? I'd be excited to help bring that closer to your audience. How can you actually use that and inspire them? So feel free to reach out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Andreas.
Andreas, this has been extremely insightful. I've definitely taken away a decent amount from this that I will be applying to my own workflows every day. Personally, I use Perplexity on like just for research and everything else going on in my personal life along with work. So that is just something that is not going to slow down anytime soon. So thank you once again for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
Absolutely. So everybody, thank you for spending time with us. Learn more about BrainDo and our marketing services on our website, www.brain.do. If you find anything helpful from this episode or anything informational, if you learned anything, please consider subscribing or giving us a follow. We are on TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn as well. Otherwise, we'll see you next time at the Roundtable.
Right.